George's life had been a struggle. He'd battled drug and alcohol addiction, and it had taken a toll on every aspect of his life. The streets had become his reality, and his days were filled with the desperation of finding his next fix. One day, exhausted and worn down, George found himself standing in line at a local shelter, surrounded by others who'd hit rock bottom just like him. The cold wind whipped through their ragged clothes, and the faint scent of disinfectant wafted from the shelter's entrance. As he waited, George couldn't help but notice the faces around him. Some were weathered and worn, with deep lines etched into their foreheads and cheeks. Others seemed to hold onto a glimmer of hope, their eyes sparkling with a determination to start anew. When it was finally his turn, George stepped forward and was greeted by a kind-faced intake counselor who asked him a series of questions, her voice gentle and non-judgmental. She asked about his history, his struggles, and his hopes for the future. George answered honestly, feeling a sense of vulnerability wash over him. After a brief assessment, the counselor welcomed him to the shelter, and George was led to a dormitory-style room where he would be staying. He was given a warm blanket, a towel, and a small locker to store his belongings. As he settled in, George was handed a tray with a steaming hot meal. The aroma of roasted vegetables and savory broth filled his nostrils, and his stomach growled with anticipation. As he ate, he began to notice the kitchen staff, who were working tirelessly to prepare meal after meal for the shelter's residents. Pots clanged, utensils scraped against the countertops, and the sizzle of onions and garlic filled the air. He watched them with a sense of fascination, wondering how they could create such nourishing food in the midst of chaos. After finishing his meal, George approached the kitchen staff and offered to help out. They welcomed him with open arms, and soon he was chopping vegetables and stirring pots of simmering soup. The aromas and tastes reignited a passion George had long forgotten: cooking. As he worked in the kitchen, the heat from the stoves warmed his face, and the rhythm of the cooking process soothed his soul. George began to find a sense of purpose. He started to see a future beyond the streets, and the shelter became more than just a place to rest his head. The staff took notice of George's enthusiasm and dedication to cooking, and they began to mentor him. They saw potential in him, and they encouraged him to grow. As the days turned into weeks, George continued to help out in the kitchen, learning new recipes and techniques. He proved himself to be reliable and hardworking, and the staff started to trust him with more responsibilities. George was tasked with preparing simple meals, and eventually, he was given the opportunity to plan and execute entire menus. The staff were impressed with his progress, and they began to discuss the possibility of hiring him as a cook. After months of hard work and dedication, the shelter's director called George into her office for a meeting. She smiled warmly and congratulated him on his progress, saying that they were impressed with his growth and commitment to the shelter. She offered him a position as a cook, and George was overjoyed. He accepted the offer without hesitation, and soon he was serving up meals to the shelter's residents as a paid employee. The residents would gather around, eagerly awaiting the latest dish George had whipped up. Some would close their eyes, savoring the flavors, while others would chat and laugh, their faces lighting up with joy. But not everyone was so kind. Some residents would complain about the food or demand special treatment. George learned to navigate these challenges with patience and understanding, his eyes meeting theirs with kindness and compassion. As George continued to serve, he found his own faith growing stronger. He began to see his work as a way to serve God, to show love and kindness to those in need. He'd pray with the residents, offer words of encouragement, and remind them that they were not alone. And as he did, George felt his own heart fill with joy and purpose. Years later, George is still cooking for the shelter, serving up meals and sharing his story with anyone who will listen. His eyes, once sunken and desperate, now shine with a sense of purpose. He's found redemption, and he's helping others do the same. George's story is one of hope and resilience, a testament to the human spirit's capacity for transformation and growth.